Most people think the best way to deal with someone who hurts you is to confront them, to argue, to demand answers, to make them feel what you felt. But here's the truth nobody tells you: the moment you react, you're still under their control. Think about it. What would happen if you didn't chase closure? What if you didn't explain your pain? What if you didn't try to prove your worth? What if you simply disappeared from their emotional radar and reappeared as someone completely different? There are certain silent behaviors, quiet, subtle, almost invisible, that hit harder than confrontation ever could. Behaviors that don't scream for attention, don't beg for understanding, and don't seek revenge. Yet these behaviors stay in people's minds for years. They make them replay memories at night. They make them question their choices. They make them regret losing you. And the scary part? You don't need to say a single word to do it. Today, I'm going to show you 7 silent behaviors that make people regret hurting you, without you ever lowering yourself, without revenge, and without drama. Because sometimes, the most powerful response is silence backed by transformation. You don't announce it when you decide to change. There's no ceremony, no applause, no dramatic post saying, "This is my comeback." It happens quietly, usually after a moment that breaks something inside you. Someone leaves, someone betrays you, someone underestimates you, someone treats you in a way that makes you question your worth. And in that moment, you stand at a crossroads. You can stay the same person, wounded, reactive, stuck in explanations, or you can choose something far more powerful: silent growth. Silent growth is not loud. It doesn't seek validation. It doesn't need an audience. It's the decision to rebuild yourself so deeply that the person who hurt you would no longer recognize who you've become. You stop talking about what you're going to do. You stop convincing people of your potential. You stop posting every small win for approval. You go underground. While everyone else is distracted by noise, you become obsessed with progress. You read when others scroll. You train when others rest. You reflect when others react. Your transformation becomes private, almost sacred. And that's the key, because the most intimidating growth is the growth nobody saw coming. There's something unsettling about watching someone rise quietly. No drama, no revenge posts, no public breakdown. Just discipline, just consistency, just results. One day they see you again and they feel it instantly. You're not the same person they once knew. Your posture is different. Your energy is different. Your words are fewer but heavier. You don't chase, you don't explain, you don't look back. You've become unfamiliar. And that's when it hits them. They didn't just lose you. They lost access to a version of you that no longer exists. Silent growth is powerful because it's not fueled by ego, it's fueled by purpose. It's the kind of growth that doesn't need revenge because success itself becomes the message. You don't need to tell them how much they hurt you. You don't need to list their mistakes. You don't need to prove they were wrong. Your existence proves it. You walk into rooms differently. You speak with clarity. You move with intention. You don't tolerate what you once begged for. People feel that shift without you saying a word. And what hurts the most for them is not that you changed. It's that you changed without them. You didn't wait for their apology. You didn't wait for closure. You didn't wait for permission to heal. You gave yourself what they never could. Silent growth teaches you discipline. It teaches you that motivation is temporary but habits are permanent. It teaches you that real change happens when nobody is watching. You wake up early not because it looks impressive, but because it builds control. You work on your craft when no one applauds. You choose healthier relationships, healthier routines, healthier thoughts, without needing to broadcast it. And slowly, quietly, you outgrow the life that once confined you. The person who hurt you still remembers the old version of you, the one who tolerated, explained, chased, doubted, but that version is gone. In their memory, you're familiar. In reality, you're someone else entirely. That disconnect is where regret lives. They replay moments in their mind, realizing they misjudged you. They thought you'd stay the same. They thought you'd always be there. They thought you'd never change, but you did. And the irony is, your silence during that transformation is what makes it so loud. You didn't argue. You didn't post cryptic messages. You didn't try to make them jealous. You just became better, and better is undeniable. Silent growth is not about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about building a life so solid that the past loses its grip on you. You don't grow to impress them. You grow because you deserve more. More peace, more strength, more control, more clarity. And when people see the gap between who you were and who you've become, it forces them to confront their own choices. They see your progress and wonder, what if I had treated them differently? They see your confidence and think, I didn't realize their worth. They see your success and feel the weight of missed opportunity. Your silence becomes a mirror, and the truth reflected in that mirror is uncomfortable. Silent growth is slow, it's lonely, it requires discipline when nobody cares, it requires belief when nobody claps. But it's also the most empowering journey you'll ever take. Because when you grow in silence, you don't just change your circumstances, you change your identity. You become someone who doesn't beg for respect, someone who doesn't chase validation, someone who doesn't stay where they are not valued. And that version of you, that version is impossible to ignore. One day they'll hear about you through someone else. They'll see your name, your work, your presence, and they'll feel a strange mix of pride and regret. Pride that they knew you, regret that they lost you. But by then, it won't matter, because silent growth isn't about them. It's about you becoming so grounded, so focused, so self-aware that the past no longer defines your future. You don't need to announce your evolution. You just need to live it. And when they finally notice, you'll already be far beyond the person they once thought they could hurt. When someone hurts you, your first instinct is to react, to explain, to confront, to demand understanding. That reaction is human, it's emotional, it's natural, but here's what most people don't realize. The moment someone can control your emotions, they control you. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it's not cruelty, it's not pretending you never cared. It's the conscious decision to take your power back. When you're emotionally attached to someone who disrespects you, every word they say becomes a trigger. Every message, every silence, every tone shift feels personal. Your mood rises and falls with their behavior. And in that state, you're not in control, you're reactive. Emotional detachment begins the moment you stop allowing your emotions to be dictated by someone else's actions. You pause before responding. You breathe before reacting. You observe instead of exploding. You realize that not every situation deserves your energy, and not every person deserves access to your inner world. At first, detachment feels unnatural. You might think you're becoming distant, colder, less human, but in reality, you're becoming disciplined. You're learning that your emotions are powerful tools, not weapons for others to use against you. When you detach, you stop chasing validation. You stop replaying conversations in your head at 2 a.m. You stop analyzing every text and every silence. You understand that clarity doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from stepping back and seeing the situation for what it truly is. People often hurt others because they sense emotional dependence. They feel powerful when they know they can provoke a reaction, anger, sadness, pleading. These reactions feed their sense of control. So when you detach, something shifts. You no longer give them what they expect. No long messages, no emotional outbursts, no desperate attempts to be understood, just calm. And calm is unsettling to someone who thrives on emotional chaos. Emotional detachment teaches you to respond, not react, to choose your battles, to decide when silence is stronger than words. You begin to realize that your peace is more valuable than winning an argument, that your mental health is more important than being right, that your dignity is worth more than temporary emotional relief. You start setting invisible boundaries. You don't chase people who walk away. You don't beg people who disrespect you. You don't overinvest in people who underdeliver. Instead, you redirect that energy inward. You focus on your goals, your growth, your values. You build a life that doesn't revolve around someone else's validation. And slowly, your emotional reactions lose their intensity. You still feel, you still care, but you're no longer controlled by those feelings. You become grounded. You can hear criticism without collapsing. You can face rejection without losing your identity. You can experience loss without losing yourself. This is power. When you detach emotionally, people notice the shift. They sense that their words no longer shake you, their absence no longer destabilizes you, their opinions no longer define you. And that's when the dynamics change. People often regret hurting someone when they realize they no longer have influence over them. They realize their actions no longer matter. Their presence no longer holds. They lost the ability to move you. Emotional detachment also gives you clarity. When you're not emotionally overwhelmed, you see patterns more clearly. You recognize manipulation, inconsistency, and disrespect without denial. You stop romanticizing potential and start evaluating reality. You see people as they are, not as you wish they would be. And that clarity is liberating. You don't need to villainize anyone. You don't need to carry hatred. You simply accept what is and adjust your behavior accordingly. Detachment is not about becoming heartless. It's about becoming selective with your heart. You learn that love without boundaries is self-destruction, that empathy without discernment is vulnerability to exploitation, that kindness without self-respect is an invitation for disrespect. So you choose differently. You choose relationships that are reciprocal. You choose conversations that are respectful. You choose environments that align with your values. And when someone tries to pull you back into old emotional patterns, you remain calm, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself more. That's when people start to feel the distance. They might try to provoke you, to test if you still react. They might send messages designed to trigger you, to pull you back into emotional chaos. But you don't engage, you don't argue, you don't defend, you don't chase. You simply observe and move on, and that silence is deafening because emotional detachment removes their leverage. They can no longer use guilt, fear, or affection to control you. They can no longer manipulate your responses. They can no longer predict your reactions. You become unpredictable, not in chaos but in strength. Detachment also brings self-respect. You stop tolerating what you once excused. You stop staying where you're not valued. You stop investing in people who treat you as an option. You realize that walking away in silence is sometimes the strongest statement you can make. And the irony is, when you detach, people often feel the loss more deeply. Not because you shouted, not because you demanded apologies, but because you stopped needing them. They sense that they no longer occupy space in your emotional world. They sense that their impact has faded. And that realization is heavy. Emotional detachment doesn't erase memories. It reframes them. You no longer replay moments with regret or anger. You view them as lessons. You extract wisdom instead of pain. You become less reactive, more reflective, less impulsive, more intentional. And with that, your energy shifts. You carry yourself differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. People feel that change even if they can't explain it. They see someone who is no longer available for emotional games, someone who is calm, centered, and grounded, someone who cannot be easily shaken. And that's when regret begins to surface. They realize they lost access to your emotions, your vulnerability, your presence. They realize they no longer have influence. They realize they no longer matter in the way they once did. Emotional detachment is not about becoming distant from everyone. It's about becoming closer to yourself. It's about protecting your inner world. It's about choosing peace over chaos. It's about valuing stability over emotional drama. And in that process, you reclaim something priceless, your power. Because the moment you stop letting others control how you feel is the moment you truly become free. Most people think setting boundaries has to be loud. They imagine confrontations, arguments, ultimatums, long emotional speeches about respect and betrayal. But the strongest boundaries are often the quietest ones. Boundaries without drama are not announced. They are enforced. They don't come with long explanations or emotional breakdowns. They come with changed behavior, limited access, and calm consistency. When someone hurts you, disrespects you, or repeatedly crosses lines, your instinct might be to confront them, to explain how you feel, to demand that they change. But boundaries without drama come from a deeper realization. You cannot control how people behave, but you can control how much access they have to you. So instead of fighting, you adjust. Instead of arguing, you distance. Instead of pleading, you observe and decide. You stop answering every call. You stop responding to every message. You stop sharing every detail of your life. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. This kind of boundary is subtle, but it's powerful. It doesn't give the other person a performance to react to. It doesn't feed their ego with drama. It doesn't give them the satisfaction of seeing you emotional. It simply changes the rules of access. You begin to understand that not everyone deserves the same level of closeness. Some people belong in the front row of your life, others belong in the audience. Some belong outside the building altogether. And you don't need to announce this rearrangement. You just move people quietly. Boundaries without drama are reflected in your availability. You're no longer instantly reachable. You no longer drop everything for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You no longer overextend yourself to maintain connections that drain you. You become selective. You realize that every yes is a trade-off and every no is a form of self-respect. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your time and energy. You stop explaining your absence. You stop justifying your distance. Because the truth is, people who respect you don't need explanations, and people who don't respect you won't listen to them anyway, so you save your breath. Boundaries without drama also mean you don't engage in unnecessary conflict. You don't argue to prove your worth. You don't defend your standards. You don't debate your decisions. You let your actions speak. You leave conversations that feel disrespectful. You walk away from environments that feel toxic. You reduce contact with people who consistently cross your lines, and you do it calmly. No insults, no emotional outbursts, no dramatic exits, just a quiet shift in behavior that changes everything. This kind of boundary confuses people who are used to chaos. They expect confrontation. They expect emotional reactions. They expect you to fight for their attention or validation. But instead, they get silence, distance, calm detachment, and that silence is unsettling. Because it forces them to think. It forces them to reflect. It forces them to face the reality that they might have lost access to you, not because you exploded, but because you matured. Boundaries without drama are rooted in clarity. You become clear about what you tolerate and what you don't. You become clear about your values, your limits, and your priorities. You stop compromising your peace for the sake of familiarity. You understand that some relationships are not meant to be repaired, they are meant to be released, and you don't need to announce the release. You simply stop parting. I-pating. You stop showing up, you stop engaging, you stop investing, not in anger, but in alignment. This approach protects your dignity. It keeps you from saying things you might regret. It keeps you from exposing your vulnerabilities to people who don't deserve them. It keeps you grounded. Boundaries without drama also teach people how to treat you. When you consistently enforce your limits, people learn that you are not someone they can disrespect without consequence. They learn that access to you is earned, not guaranteed. They learn that your presence is valuable, not automatic. And if they don't learn, they lose access. Simple. This kind of boundary setting is powerful because it's quiet. It doesn't create enemies. It doesn't create spectacle. It creates distance, and distance is often the most effective form of protection. You don't need to explain your standards to everyone. You don't need to convince people to treat you better. You don't need to chase respect. You demonstrate it through your behavior. You leave when disrespected. You disengage when manipulated. You withdraw when unappreciated. And you do it without noise. People who hurt you often expect a reaction. They expect confrontation, anger, pleading, or drama. But boundaries without drama deny them that reaction. They are left with silence, and silence is uncomfortable. They begin to wonder why you changed. They replay conversations. They notice your absence. And that absence speaks louder than any argument ever could. Boundaries without drama also shift your internal world. You stop feeling responsible for other people's feelings. You stop carrying guilt for choosing yourself. You stop over-explaining your decisions. You become comfortable with being misunderstood. Because you realize that being understood by everyone is impossible, but being aligned with yourself is essential. You start to prioritize peace over approval. You choose stability over chaos. You choose self-respect over familiarity. And with that, your life becomes quieter, clearer, and more intentional. You're no longer pulled into every emotional storm. You're no longer drained by every conversation. You're no longer stuck in cycles of conflict and reconciliation. You simply move forward. Boundaries without drama are not about pushing people away. They're about protecting yourself. They're about curating your environment, your relationships, and your emotional space. They're about understanding that your energy is limited and not everyone deserves access to it. And when people realize they've lost access to you, they often feel something unexpected: regret. Not because you yelled, not because you demanded apologies, but because you walked away quietly. They realize they can't cross your lines anymore. They realize they no longer have the same place in your life. They realize they took your presence for granted. And by the time they notice, you're already somewhere else, calm, focused, and unbothered. Boundaries without drama are not about punishment. They're about peace. They're about building a life where your standards are honored, your time is respected, and your energy is protected. You don't need to make noise to be powerful. You don't need to argue to be respected. You don't need to explain to be understood. Sometimes, the strongest boundary is simply changing our behavior and letting silence do the talking. And in that silence, you reclaim control, dignity, and peace, without ever raising your voice. There is a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk into a room demanding attention. It doesn't post every achievement, every milestone, every victory. It simply exists, undeniable, unignorable. Quiet success is not about hiding. It's about letting reality speak louder than words. Most people talk about what they're going to do. They broadcast intentions, plans, dreams. They chase recognition before results. But quiet success moves differently. It works in the shadows. It builds when nobody is watching. It progresses when nobody is clapping. It doesn't need to be validated because it is self-evident. When someone hurts you, the temptation is to prove them wrong immediately, to show them what they missed, to throw your success in their face. But the most powerful response is patience. You don't rush to show them anything. You don't tag them in your journey. You don't craft your life as a message to them. You build a life so solid that it doesn't need an audience. Quiet success is waking up early when no one sees. It's studying when no one knows. It's training when no one cares. It's refining your craft when nobody is watching your progress. There is no applause for discipline at dawn. There is no spotlight on consistency. There is no reward for showing up every day except the transformation itself. And that transformation is silent until it's not. One day people notice, they notice your confidence, they notice your clarity, they notice your stability, they notice that you've moved into spaces they never imagined for you, and they realize they missed the process. Quiet success has a way of disarming people. It doesn't boast, it doesn't brag, it doesn't explain, it just exists. And existence at a higher level is louder than any argument. When someone hurt you, they might have seen you as weak, uncertain, or dependent. They might have assumed you would stay the same. They might have thought you'd never rise beyond what they saw. Quiet success proves them wrong without confrontation. You don't send them updates. You don't send them proof. You don't send them explanations. You send nothing. And yet, when they hear about you, when they see you, when your name comes up, the message is clear. You grew, you evolved, you moved forward without them. Quiet success is deeply personal. It's not built for applause, it's built for fulfillment. It's not driven by ego, it's driven by purpose. You stop chasing external validation. You stop needing people to acknowledge your progress. You stop measuring your worth by other people's opinions. You measure it by your discipline, your integrity, your consistency, and that changes everything. You become more focused, less distracted, more intentional, less reactive, more grounded, less performative. You no longer need to prove anything to anyone. That's what makes it so powerful. Quiet success also reshapes your identity. You're no longer defined by who hurt you. You're defined by what you built after. Your story is no longer about betrayal, disappointment, or rejection. It's about resilience, growth, and self-mastery. You stop telling the story of what they did. You start living the story of what you did in response. And the response is not revenge, it's elevation. People often regret hurting someone when they see how far that person has gone without them. They realize they underestimated your potential. They realize they misjudged your strength. They realize they were part of a chapter, not the whole book. Quiet success is also humbling. It keeps you grounded. It reminds you that progress is built in solitude. It teaches you that applause is temporary, but character is permanent. You learn to celebrate privately. You learn to find joy in small wins. You learn to appreciate progress even when no one else sees it. And that internal validation becomes addictive. You no longer need external recognition to feel accomplished. You know who you are becoming, and that's enough. When someone who hurt you sees your quiet success, they feel a strange mix of emotions: curiosity, regret, admiration, distance. They wonder how you did it. They wonder when it happened. They wonder why they didn't see it coming. But by the time they notice, you're already far ahead. Quiet success also protects your peace. When you don't broadcast every move, you avoid unnecessary opinions, jealousy, and interference. You move strategically. You build privately. You grow without pressure. You keep your plan sacred. You let results be the announcement, and results are undeniable. No argument can compete with reality. No explanation can compete with evidence. No narrative can compete with visible progress. You don't need to defend your choices when your life speaks for itself. Quiet success is patient. It understands that real growth takes time. It respects the process. It embraces the grind. It's flashy. It's not dramatic. It's consistent. And consistency is what separates fantasy from reality. You show up when you're tired. You continue when you're discouraged. You persist when nobody believes in you, and slowly, quietly, you build something unshakable. When people see the outcome, they often don't understand the sacrifice behind it. They see confidence, not the insecurity you fought through. They see stability, not the chaos you survived. They see success, not the solitude it required. But and that knowledge gives you a quiet confidence that cannot be taken away. Quiet success also changes how you interact with the past. You don't feel the need to revisit old wounds. You don't feel the need to reopen conversations. You don't feel the need to prove anything. You're too busy building. The past becomes irrelevant in the presence of a compelling future. And that's when regret hits the hardest for those who hurt you. Not because you confronted them, not because you demanded accountability, but because you outgrew the narrative they had of you. You became someone they can't access, influence, or understand. Quiet success is not about revenge. It's about legacy. It's about building a life that reflects your values, your discipline, and your resilience. It's about becoming someone you respect, regardless of who's watching. And when people finally notice, they won't hear you brag. They won't hear you explain. They won't hear you complain. They'll just see the results. And those results will say everything you never needed to say. There is a point in your journey where anger fades, revenge loses its appeal, and even the desire to be understood becomes quiet. It's not because you forgot what happened, it's because you no longer live there. Peaceful indifference is not weakness. It is not denial. It is not pretending you never cared. It is the final level of emotional freedom. In the beginning, pain is loud. You replay conversations. You imagine what you should have said. You think about what they did and what you deserved. Your mind loops through scenarios, searching for closure, validation, or justice. But over time, something changes. You realize that carrying that emotional weight is costing you more than what they ever took from you. You realize that replaying the past doesn't rewrite it. You realize that obsession is still a form of attachment. So you start letting go, not in a dramatic, cinematic way, but quietly, gradually, almost without noticing. Peaceful indifference begins when you stop needing them to understand your pain. You stop wanting apologies that may never come. You stop imagining conversations that will never happen. You don't erase the past. You release its grip on your present. At first, indifference feels unfamiliar. You might wonder if you've become cold. You might fear you've lost a part of yourself. But what you've actually lost is emotional dependency. You no longer check their profile. You no longer ask about their life. You no longer feel a surge of emotion when you hear their name. They become neutral, and neutrality is powerful. Peaceful indifference is when their opinions no longer define you. Their approval no longer excites you. Their criticism no longer shakes you. You don't need to win their respect. You don't need to prove them wrong. You don't need to show them what they lost. You already know your worth. Indifference doesn't mean you hate them. Hate requires energy, focus, and emotional investment. Indifference requires none of that. You simply don't allocate mental space to them anymore. They become background, noise in a life that is moving forward. This state is hard to reach because it requires acceptance. Acceptance that people are flawed. Acceptance that some wounds don't get apologies. Acceptance that closure is sometimes self-created. You stop expecting people to be who they are not. You stop trying to change outcomes that already happened. You stop attaching your peace to someone else's behavior. And in that acceptance, you find peace. Peaceful indifference also changes how you see yourself. You no longer define yourself by what happened to you. You define yourself by how you responded. You see your growth. You see your resilience. You see your evolution. The story shifts from, they hurt me, to I became stronger. And that shift is everything. Indifference doesn't erase memories, it reframes them. Instead of emotional triggers, they become data points, lessons, experiences, chapters. You don't romanticize the pain, but you respect the growth it triggered. You no longer crave revenge. Revenge ties you to the person who hurt you. It keeps them in your emotional orbit. Indifference cuts that orbit completely. You don't wish them harm. You don't wish them well, you simply wish yourself forward. This level of detachment confuses people. They expect anger. They expect confrontation. They expect emotional reactions. But instead, they get calm distance, no messages, no explanations, no emotional engagement, just absence. And absence is loud. When people realize they no longer occupy space in your thoughts, it hits differently. They might try to reconnect, provoke, or remind you of the past. They might test if you still care. But you don't react, not out of pride, not out of strategy, but out of genuine emotional neutrality. You're not pretending. You're simply elsewhere, peaceful. Indifference also brings clarity. You see relationships more objectively. You recognize patterns without denial. You choose connections based on alignment, not attachment. You no longer chase people who are inconsistent. You no longer invest in people who are indifferent to your presence. You no longer tolerate behavior that disturbs your peace. You choose calm over chaos. You choose respect over familiarity. You choose alignment over nostalgia. And that changes the quality of your life. Indifference gives you back time. Time previously spent overthinking. Time previously spent replaying. Time previously spent analyzing every word, every silence, every memory. Now that time belongs to you, you use it to build, to learn, to create, to live. You stop living in emotional flashbacks and start living in real moments. This is where true freedom begins. Freedom from emotional triggers. Freedom from old narratives. Freedom from needing validation from the past. You're no longer emotionally tied to what happened. You're tied to where you're going. Peaceful indifference doesn't make you emotionless. It makes you selective. You still care deeply, just not about everything and everyone. You reserve your energy for what matters. You protect your inner world. You become calm, sent, read, and grounded, and that calm becomes your power. People who hurt you often realize too late that they no longer matter. They see that you've moved on not with noise but with silence. They see that their impact faded, and that realization is heavy because they can't undo the past. They can't reclaim the version of you that was emotionally available to them. They can't re-enter a space that no longer exists. Peaceful indifference is not about punishing them. It's about liberating yourself. It's about choosing mental clarity over emotional chaos. It's about choosing forward motion over backward fixation. It's about living a life where your peace is not negotiable. You no longer wake up thinking about what they did. You no longer go to sleep replaying conversations. You no longer measure your worth through their lens. You exist on your own terms, and that is the final level. Not anger, not revenge, not validation, just peace, a quiet, grounded, unshakable peace that comes from knowing you are no longer emotionally controlled by the past. They might think about you, they might regret losing you, they might wonder what could have been. But you won't be thinking about them. You'll be thinking about your goals, your growth, your present, your future, and that is the ultimate power. When someone who once mattered becomes just a neutral memory in a life that has moved far beyond them, peaceful indifference is not the end of feeling, it is the beginning of freedom. At the end of the day, people won't regret hurting you because you argued with them. They won't regret it because you begged them to understand. They won't regret it because you tried to prove you are worth. They'll regret it because you chose silence over chaos, growth over bitterness, discipline over emotion, peace over revenge. You didn't collapse, you didn't chase, you didn't stay the same. You became someone they could no longer reach, influence, or control. You grew in silence until your presence spoke for itself. You detached emotionally and took your power back. You set boundaries without drama and without apology. You let your success speak louder than any argument. And finally, you reached indifference, the level where the past no longer owns you. That is real strength, not loud, not dramatic, not performative. Real strength is quiet, controlled, and unstoppable. Remember this: you don't need revenge to win. You don't need closure to move forward. You don't need validation to know your worth. Your transformation is the response. Your peace is the statement. Your life is the proof. So walk forward without looking back. Let your silence build, your discipline shape, and your peace protect you. And one day when they think of you, they won't remember your words. They'll remember the person you became after they thought they broke you. That is your message. That is your power.